they were killed. Yeah.
The individual currently in police custody is named Donald Hartung. His actions towards his entire family have been truly horrifying. It is difficult to believe that someone could commit such acts. Despite this, he remains confident as he interacts with the detectives.
How would it do? It looked like they were shot. Shot. How was that? Oh, it looked like they were shot.
Police discover a grisly scene, a mother and two sons murdered.
Florida police are investigating the murder of an elderly woman and her two sons killed in their Pensacola home. Police believe it was part of a ritual.
Initial research has led us to believe that there's a potential that it was a ritualistic killing. It's witchcraft, I'll say that right now.
Meanwhile, he is Richard Smith, who is leaving his office, was last seen in the CCTV footage.
Richard worked in the crypto department. You know, some of this we really aren't at liberty to talk about, some of the elements of the case, but he worked in the crypto room, which is all the codes that they teach the Navy folks.
On July 31st, 2015, a Pensacola police officer discovered the bodies of 3 individuals in a residence. Among the deceased was 77-year-old Von Sile Smith, along with her 2 sons, William Smith and Richard Thomas Smith. The victims had been brutally murdered, with the assailant using a hammer and other sharp tools. Following the killings, the bodies were concealed beneath a layer of clothing. This heinous crime took place over the course of 3 days, culminating on the night of July 28th, which happened to be a rare blue moon night. Richard and his brother, along with their mother, usually resided in Pensacola. Von Sile Smith is their stepmother, and her son, Donald Wayne Hartung, also lives separately from them. Donald works as a security guard and had no enmity with the Smith family. They did not interact much with others, and their father had already passed away. Everything seemed normal until the shocking incident occurred. Donald Hartung would only visit their home on Tuesdays to cook for them. The day of the murder, July 28th, happened to be a Tuesday, and Donald was at Richard's house that day. When Richard went missing, his acquaintances reported it to the police. Upon arriving at Richard's home, the officers were met with a scene of chaos. Clothes were strewn everywhere, and there were stains of blood in various places. After some investigation, a male leg was found hanging under a pile of clothes, and a female hand was found under another pile.
The house was kind of in disarray. They noticed that there were piles of blankets and clothing. Once they kind of lifted the outer edges of those piles of blankets and clothing, in the den area, they observed, a foot. And they also observed a female hand underneath one of the piles.
Beneath the clothes, the officers discovered the bodies of Richard's entire family, all with deep wounds on their heads and their throats slit. The brutality of the crime was horrifying.
Whoever did it walked right up to him, hit him in the head with a hammer, and then was able to cut his throat. He didn't even try and defend himself. So he was either asleep or knew the individual. The mom was killed in the same manner. She was killed in her chair in the living room where she always stayed and watched TV. She was hit in the head as well with a hammer, and her throat was also cut. Richard was shot, had a wound to his head, and his throat was also cut.
As someone had mercilessly murdered the family within moments.
The way in which each of the victims were killed was very brutal.
Well, whoever had done this had taken time, obviously, to cover the bodies.
The investigation revealed that the murderer had not left any traces behind, and it was unclear if they had forcefully entered the home or stolen anything.
I knew that this wasn't a random homicide because there was no forced entry to the home. So it was like whoever did this came over there for a specific reason, committed these murders, and then tried to conceal it.
I try not to think of what they went through that day, because when I do a breakdown, when I think of what they went through, that's the hard thing.
During the investigation, DNA of an unknown person was found on Richard's pants belt.
And there was DNA in one of his front pants pockets that was not identified. which is a pretty strange thing to have happen.
Following extensive investigation, all suspicions were pointing towards Donald Hartung. When questioned, Donald appeared confident and unaffected, showing no signs of distress.
Start by getting what's your first name?
Donald.
What's your middle name, Ronald?
Wayne, W-A-N-E. Hartung, H-A-R-T-U-G.
You have good relationships with them, or?
Yeah, we have a great relationship.
However, when asked about the deaths of his stepbrother and mother, Donald pretended to have no knowledge.
How was it killed?
It looked like they were shot.
Shot.
Mm-hmm.
How was that?
Well, it looked like they were shot. It's hard to tell because there was a lot of clothes on top of it.
Clothes on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
Raw.
I don't think so.
It just looks like somebody just came in and shot him.
Yeah, looks like somebody knew them who were dead.
Like, I don't know anybody that they know. Could have been anybody.
Despite his denial when questioned about being at Richard's house on the night of the incident, Donald refused to admit any involvement.
And killed your mom,
I did not kill my mother.
and then killed your brother.
I would never kill my mom or my brother. Either one of my brothers. I mean, do I look like some kind of a blooming maniac to you people?
I mean, you do to me.
With permission to investigate Donald's home, shocking revelations came to light.
He was also asked if they could search his home, which again was approximately 3 miles away from where the Smith family lived. He did consent to a search of his home. He did seem cooperative.
It was discovered that Donald practiced Wiccan rituals, with a room dedicated to worship and magic books. It was revealed that Donald believed in Wiccan practices and had performed rituals that involved sacrificing human lives.
And in his home, he had the altar set up with the dead flowers and the dagger, and he had a pentagram on the floor.
On the night of the blue moon, which fell on July 28th, Richard's family was tragically murdered. This event shook the Hartung community, although it was not entirely surprising given that Donald Hartung's mother was a devout Christian who was aware of Donald's involvement in Wiccan rituals.
And she did not agree with her son doing the Wiccan, and she knew he was doing the Wiccan. It's witchcraft to her. It's devil worship. That's the way my aunt thought about it. And she didn't want her other 2 sons around him. She was very against it.
It was revealed to the detective that Donald only visited Richard's house on Tuesdays to cook meals, which raised suspicions. The detective connected the case to the Blue Moon Night, as Donald practiced his witchcraft during that time. It became evident that Donald had sacrificed his family during the Wiccan ritual on the Blue Moon Night. When questioned about his knowledge of Wiccan practices, Donald denied any involvement, claiming ignorance.
Nobody has seen these people since Tuesday, since you saw them.
I was the last one to see him alive.
Yeah. So how are you going to sit there and tell us that you didn't kill them when you were the last one to see them? They trusted you, and you killed them. They didn't think anything of it. They didn't know it was coming.
I love my parents.
I'm sure you did.
I
But
love
you
my
killed
mom
them.
and my brothers, and I did not kill them. I did not kill them. I would never harm my mother, never hurt my brothers, never.
However, evidence found at Donald's home indicated his familiarity with Wiccan craft. Wicca is the largest of the modern pagan or neo-pagan religions, with followers who identify as Wiccans and draw inspiration primarily from the pre-Christian religions of Europe. Influenced by earlier forms of Western esotericism, Wicca first emerged publicly in England during the 1950s. Initially, most Wiccans were members of initiatory groups known as covens, but by the early 21st century, many followers began practicing solitarily. Currently, the number of Wiccans is estimated to be in the low hundreds of thousands, with the majority residing in English-speaking Western countries. The pentagram, or five-pointed star, is commonly used as the main symbol of the religion. Donald Hartung was a member of this religion. The detective learned that human sacrifices were not a significant aspect of the Wiccan religion.
That is just insanity. There is no such thing as human sacrifice in the religion of Wicca. None.
Leading to the conclusion that Donald had ulterior motives for his actions. Despite Donald's repeated denials and lack of concrete evidence linking him to the crime, DNA found on Richard's belt at the crime scene pointed to his involvement.
That definitely jumped out to us, and we had Donald Hartung's DNA on the inside of Richard's belt. And obviously that was a place that his DNA should not have been, because he told law enforcement that he had not seen Richard in either 2 to 3 weeks.
The detective had no choice but to continue questioning Donald, who adamantly maintained his innocence. With no other viable options for arrest, the detective was left with a challenging case to solve. The detective's suspicions were firmly on Donald, as he was the one who had gone to meet his family on the night of the last blue moon. The detective also believed that the DNA could belong to Donald Hartung. However, when questioned about these matters, Donald denied ever meeting Richard for a long time. During the investigation around the crime scene, the detective found a clue near a trash can, a cigarette butt. Donald had picked it up and thrown it in the trash can, which belonged to Richard's family. When the cigarette was sent to the lab for testing, it was found to have the DNA of an unknown person. Shockingly, the cigarette had been cleaned with an artificial cleaner.
And then on top of that was a cigarette butt that had Donald Hartung's DNA. So whoever put that cigarette butt in the trash can or smoked that cigarette butt and placed it on top of the items of cleanup was certainly in the home, at least at the time of the homicides and the time of the cleanup.
That kind of sealed the deal in my mind that Donald was the one who did this.
But forensic tests confirmed that the DNA on it belonged to Donald Hartung. With enough evidence to arrest Donald, the investigation took 3 months before he was finally apprehended. As the trial approached, more evidence was expected to come to light, potentially solving the entire crime case. During the trial, some victims who knew Donald well, such as Mr. Purifoy, were called to testify. Purifoy claimed that Donald had orchestrated everything using an Ouija board.
Did there come a time when Mr. Hartung talked about the murder of his family?
Yeah, he told me.
Okay. And did he tell you who killed his mother and 2 brothers?
He said he killed them.
During the investigation, the detective searched Donald's house and found an Ouija board. The Ouija board is known for its mystical properties, and Purifoy revealed that Donald would follow the board's instructions, even going as far as sacrificing his own family members.
Did he tell you why?
He said he wanted the money because she left him out the will.
Now, did he tell you if the murders was it just something that kind of happened, or was it something he'd been thinking about?
Well, he said he'd been playing it last 3 to 4 years. He said Ouija board made him go overboard, though.
The what? I'm sorry?
A Ouija board.
What about a Ouija board?
He said that really made him do it, made him go overboard.
Purifoy also disclosed that Donald had tortured his mother and even cut off her pinky finger, keeping it in a box as a gruesome memento. It was clear that Donald had been planning this murder for the past 3 years, all for financial gain. Further investigation revealed that the Smith family kept to themselves and rarely interacted with their neighbors.
These people, they stayed to themselves. There were neighbors that didn't have any interaction with them.
Early afternoon, I saw Mr. Hartung arrive, and then later on I saw RT come home, and then I saw Mr. Hartung leave.
Now, was it normal or abnormal to see RT come home while Hartung was still at the house?
It was not usual. Usually Mr. Hartung was gone before RT came home.
However, their neighbors had noticed Donald visiting their home every Tuesday before quickly leaving. On July 28th, Donald was seen leaving the Smith family's home late at night with his headlights off. The date of the Smith family's murder was initially believed to be July 28th, but medical experts determined it to be July 29th.
There's no way that those people were murdered any time earlier than Wednesday. So all of the scientific evidence was with the defense. It couldn't have been Donald, so that's why the time of death was so important in this case.
Despite this discrepancy, evidence such as Richard wearing the same shirt on both days pointed to the murder occurring on the night of the blue moon.
He is wearing the exact same thing when his body is found on Friday the 31st. What does that tell you? He was murdered right when he got home from work.
Although Donald appeared calm and collected, it was evident that he was involved in the heinous crime. The investigation was ongoing, but all signs pointed to Donald Hartung as the perpetrator of the Smith family's murder. Throughout the entire trial, Donald Hartung remained calm and composed, showing no signs of anxiety or tension on his face. He sat there as if he had nothing to hide.
Several times he would turn around and look at us. Sometimes he would turn around and smile, like a smirk, like I'm gonna get out of this.
However, as the trial progressed, the DNA evidence found on Richard's belt, checkbook, and cigarette pointed towards Donald Hartung as the perpetrator of his family's murder on July 28th. On January 29th, 2020, the trial was coming to a close, and Donald was facing the death penalty in a triple murder case. The weapon used in the crime was never identified, and there were no witnesses who could easily bring the case to a close. However, on Thursday, Donald Hartung demanded to speak and insisted that he had not committed any murders.
Speak. Your Honor, I would like to respectfully ask for a mistrial. Mrs. Wilson replied, after I asked her opinion, she said, "You're stupid." I said, "What? What did you say?" And Mrs. Wilson said, "I said you're a stupid asshole." I'm a $10-hour security guard, Your Honor. I couldn't possibly be expected to go up against 4 seasoned attorneys. I was duped and I was tricked, and I'm willing to admit it. And so were you.
Throughout his 45-minute statement, Donald maintained his innocence, but the judge ultimately sentenced him to death, dismissing his claims.
So maybe some of them would have thought that maybe it was just a lost cause, that, he's probably going to die in prison, in a short amount of time, and so what use is the death penalty at that point?
He's miserable. He deserves to be miserable. When it first happened, I hated him. I wanted him to suffer. I had to work through forgiveness to forgive him. And I do forgive him, but I will never forget what he did.